Hello, everyone. All right, so now we're getting to the end of the Demonweb Pits campaign, and let's kick it into some old school lore, which is, hey, where does this Demonweb Pits come from? Is this a completely original concept? No, as you can tell from this very old cover of a Dungeons and Dragons adventure, which originally, sort of like we covered in the previous series of videos, started as convention play. People out there playing Dungeons and Dragons, and someone wrote this up, in this case, a very famous Gary Gygax and David Sutherland. They wrote up this convention experience and then wrote it back into or published it as an actual adventure called Queen of the Demonweb Pits, which ended this very long, storied, cool series of adventure modules, which were from the Against the Giants series, and then Descent into the Depths of the Earth, and Vault of the Drow, and then the Queen of the Demonweb Pits. And this classic adventure pitted you against Lolth and introduced her really widely to the world and to the gaming area. So Lolth was known for being able to change shape. She could look like a beautiful drow. She could look sort of driderish, but kind of more impressive, and was often in the company of all kinds of demons. You might recognize, these Glabrezu and Hezru demons from the game of Neverwinter if you've played it or watched the previous videos. And so, this is the end of 7 modules, right? Like, this is a pretty big, which is fitting because here in Neverwinter, we're talking about the end of 3 big series and even a couple before that, if we count the Rothay Valley and other pieces that we've covered. The Whispering Caverns. If you've seen all these videos, there is a lot of drow content here. The Aure Salvatore series, the Out of the Abyss series. So there's a lot that's dealt with drow and the Underdark. And it really all goes back lore-wise to Queen of the Demonweb Pits and that whole drow series, as well as some other drow things that we've seen throughout the years. So this is really interesting in that the big concept of this adventure is going into another plane. And the idea is that Lolth has a layer of the abyss known as the Demonweb Pits. And we get rules for things like, hey, here's what it looks like when you kind of go on this map, and it'll look really strange because you can be above and below each other and things like that. And there can be all kinds of strange rooms attached and all of that. And if I go to I think it'll be the end probably, the maps, you can see this is what the Demonweb look like. This weird mosaic. And what this is all about is that you kind of work through this web on various different levels and can even find ways from one to the other. And that's part of the kind of fun puzzle of it. And then there are these various encounters here. But a lot of it is kind of empty, and it's about random encounters. So, there were pluses and minuses in terms of the design. And at the end, you face Lolth in what is kind of her spaceship. This giant kind of spider-looking structure is where she hides. It's really kind of very, very, very interesting because D&D has often had this sort of sci-fi angle to it. Some classic art about all these fights against yokels, which appear in some of the D&D content in Neverwinter, and many, many spiders of all kinds and driders and so on. But one of the things that's cool about the Demonweb Pits is that it has all of these worlds attached to it. So it's on one hand kind of like a maze. It's described as sort of this kind of tunnel that looks almost web-like. But then there'll be these doors, and the doors can lead to all kinds of places. Not only Lolth's weird sort of spaceship thing, but lots of different worlds that are detailed. Here's a picture of one of them. And so, this was incredible as a dungeon master back in the day, that, you would just get these ideas like, hey, here's what this world is, the night world of Vlad Tolgankov, and it's a very vampire kind of world. And they give you a little bit of information as to what it looks like and an idea for the castle. And then it's like, have at it. You want to explore this place? Dungeon master, get to work, create all this world so that, people can have fun. And then eventually you get to the spider ship of Lolth, and you face off against Lolth. And I could tell you a million fun stories. All right, not a million, but I could tell you a lot of fun stories about the way that battle played off when we ran it and played it as kids in high school. It was so much fun, and there was all kinds of crazy things like psionics and all of that. But yeah, so that's the idea, is the lore really of this whole Demonweb piece comes or it pays a lot of homage to that classic adventure. And as we've talked about in this series, the Narbondellan campaign, which is called Demonweb Pits, really goes back to this and to R.A. Salvatore's novels, both older ones and newer recent ones, that flesh out the world of Menzoberranzan, the city of Menzoberranzan, and the Underdark, and Drow society, and all these things. And R.A. Salvatore has created more lore for Drow and Driders than anyone ever has, right? Really quite impressive. So in previous videos, I've covered how all of the plot plays out, right? Where we go to the Narbondellan and we have the Narbondel, that huge glowing clock off in the distance. And around this kind of very nice, beautiful, gorgeous neighborhood, we find these Drow houses. They're at war with, at first, an unknown enemy. Then it's revealed to be Gromph Baenre, who is recruited a bunch of Drow somehow and deployed them against the city. And so there are all these hostile Drow in the area, even though we're now working with the Drow. And rifts have opened up all over the place. And as we figure out what's going on, well, the story is that Gromph kind of tricked someone into, or maybe he did it himself, I forget, to using this engine and creating... And the engine exploded. This is what's called the Realm Engine. And with the help of those Drow who are trying to oppose this, we recreate. We find the parts of the Realm Engine, we put them back together, we start closing off rifts, and we find what Gromph is up to. And in one of the missions, you get to sort of do a thing that you get to repeat every week, but it starts with this idea of going off and seeing what Gromph is doing, stopping him, and then you face off against Lolth. And when you get her to like have her hit points, she retreats as the Realm Engine is turned on, and that's the end of that. You know, kind of like you've pushed Lolth away and stopped Gromph's ritual. But story-wise, it doesn't end there, even though it feels kind of that way for the campaign, because then you just go and do quests over and over and over again. But what actually you can do to kind of really do a nice ending to the campaign is face off against Lolth in a bigger version of that experience with Gromph Baenre. And you're going to see this. It's going to look a lot like the weekly event that we did, that one mission, but with bigger extra pieces and going into the Demonweb. And that gives you a pretty neat story, which combines all of these lore elements. So I was fortunate enough to jump into a game just by chance with a bunch of guild and alliance members, where we ended up running the Demonweb Pits. And there are two versions of it. There's one that's much harder than the other. This was the easy version. Because I was filming, you will not see me at my best. Sometimes I'm running around and changing settings and things like that. So forgive me for all that. You know, I assure you I'm a very fine player in this video game. Okay, anyway, I do my best. But we're going to watch that because we happen to see it. And you'll see it looks a lot like that weekly, but with all these kinds of new and extra parts. Here I'm kind of like, oh gosh, I got to record this and not even thinking. So it's just like the weekly event. We start here and we get to jump, kind of take a little shortcut and jump across. And I'm trying to catch up to my fellows here basically. But this looks exactly like the previous quest that we did, right? There's mobs of demons and some Drow, and we go over here to prepare for the first battle. And this part changes. Here we're going to face off against this commander Zhaun'ol'leal, I think, Sikasila, I think that's what it says there. So we kind of get, prepped and ready. I'm still kind of shocked that this actually came up randomly out of all the many things that can show up. And what this commander is a Marilith. So she is a demon. I forget what her type was, type 5, type 6, type 4, I forget, in the olden days. But she comes from, back in the 1970s. The idea of her, this demon called Marilith, which, as you can see, has 6 arms, each one wielding a different weapon. But she is not just any Marilith. Marilith could also cast spells and summon other demons. But in addition to that, she has some very special attacks that are part of the kind of Neverwinter situation. So the first is that you see here, she can, I think she's about to do this, to create multiples of herself. Maybe she's going to do her eye raise laser first. But she does a bunch of really cool attacks. She's always using her various weapons, attacking multiple times to everybody around her. She conjures these. You can see these like sort of red meteors. I think this is supposed to be like a meteor swarm spell. And so we've got to dodge it, and it creates these kind of meteors that go around. And you can choose to destroy them or attack her, but it also makes it hard to attack her, which is kind of what I was trying to do. And if you end up in the explosive part of one, you get tossed around like that. I was very clever to show that to you. Yeah. And she can shield up sometimes. You can attack her from behind her shield, which is kind of neat. It looks a nice effect. And what she's going to do next, I think she's doing around here, she's going to create multiples of herself, or maybe it's a beam. Let's see what she does next. Let's see. Sometimes you can defeat her fast enough, she'll skip phases. Well, she did not skip this because you see this huge beam of doom she does. It'll if it touches you, you're dead. But you can just she's doing it clockwise, and you can just move around. I think she does it facing at one of the entranceways, so you can even know where to stand when she launches it. If you have any questions about the actual mechanics, Aragon on his Neverwinter channel does great coverage of the mechanics of this, and also the Zebnid one I showed in my previous series. So yeah, she does this beam, and then she'll do this eye thing and create multiple versions of herself, each one with a sort of eye above it. And she can do this, which is really a bummer. If she happens to do her laser beam thing while she is multipled, then you get multiple laser beams, and you've got to stay in between them. When you're attacking, she'll have these multiples until you take down the original one. And I enjoy that kind of puzzle. So sometimes in Dungeons & Dragons, you're like, hey, this thing just made multiples. Do I attack the copies? Do I attack the original? If I can even figure out which one is the original. So the answer in this case is attack the actual one if you can figure out which one it is. So we do that. The multiples go away. We've got to resuscitate our friends here as I finally realize that they're down. Again, I'm not at my best in this video. Forgive me, everyone. And forgive me, folks who are in my party. Could have been a lot better. But yeah, so, you know, we survived the multiples. We survived the beams, the multiple beams. The shield is there causing trouble. I try to get in behind it. And then we finally are able to defeat Commander Sikasila. That's kind of a cool name. And we see her there. And we now can proceed, seeing a few... I go there to get rid of my death penalty, which is never a bad idea. So just like in Dungeons & Dragons, when you die, you get a kind of minus to all your stats. So I do that, and I boost myself up again, and I head towards these demon and drow that are around here. It's just sort of like little mobs to tie up your time here. But otherwise, it's really, you know, it's the same cool setting we saw before, and it's worth just mentioning. I mean, we are in an area of the city that's kind of like on the edge of like broken rock, and it looks like it's something out of like Doctor Strange, right? You can see these floating towers and just things that are crumbling, and this is a world that's sort of torn apart by the ritual that Gromph Baenre used and the explosion of the original first realm engine, which we've repaired. So it's a really quite neat backdrop, and sometimes you forget it because there's so much battling going on. But I mean, look how cool this all looks. It's really neat. And if you were to, you know, as we did in the previous video where it took some time to look off the edges, it looks really cool, you know, to look at all those kind of broken areas. Now we again come here. This is very similar to the other piece. There's these mobs of demons, and we take them apart. When you kill this last group of demons, appears in the center through this rift before you can close it. I think, yeah, Ahmatot, something like that. It's very hard to read on my version. But yeah, so you can see here how cool that looks. And in the original quest, you know, this is sort of almost the end. We fight some kind of special spider types, and then it's Lolth. But not this case. In this case, it's going to be a little different. We're going to face Gromph Baenre himself. And Gromph, you know, last time he just sort of runs away, and we face Lolth, and that's the end of it. Here, no, we're about halfway. So we're going to face Gromph Baenre and try to defeat him as he, I guess, tries again to do the ritual, and so we can't have that. Dun, dun, dun. Looks pretty sweet. He does a cool move, superhero move. Sure. So Gromph is pretty cool. He has some really neat animations, and he looks really cool as he just comes at you with this huge maul kind of a thing that he uses to attack. And then he'll summon, of course, various enemies. So, you know, he summons a pit fiend there, I think it was, and another creature there. And you generally want to kind of hack down those other ads. Let's turn down that volume a bit. Because the ads will get too much, and they can sometimes power themselves up. So we usually try to do that. Gromph will at times bring up a powerful shield. So sort of imagine it like it's more than a spell. I would imagine it as sort of like something that is sometimes an encounter is like when I'm doing for Dungeons and Dragons tabletop games. I will give the idea that, hey, like this pillar lights up and gives a bunch of temporary hit points or shielding effect to my boss to protect it, which then you've got to do something about that. So like, you know, yeah, you could keep it whittling away at the shield, but better is to go off and destroy the shield generator. And this is sort of like that. So we go off and we attack a bunch of things. And now what he does, he actually summons the Avatar of Orcus. So as you can see, one hits quite hard. So we tear into the Avatar of Orcus because you can't have the Avatar of Orcus just running around on top of all the other stuff. You want to try to take care of Orcus as quickly as you can. Orcus always looks really cool with his huge bat wings. He's the demon lord of undead. He has these, you know, huge hits with his mace that has a skull on it. Very cool. I have a miniature of it back there somewhere. So yeah, we tear into the Avatar of Orcus. There's some other demons that get summoned, but we do it fast enough that it doesn't get too complicated, and we dodge, well, mostly dodge a bunch of those effects. But yeah, it's cool. Really neat effects. And now we get back to Gromph. Gromph has another sort of shield protecting himself. But we're able to tear away at him and these other demons that are there. I get stunned. Gromph sometimes picks on someone and decides he's going to really beat on them, and that can be kind of painful. But we had some very good healer action going on here. Shout out to the gang, so that we can weather it. You see our bars stay up most of the time. Very few oh no moments here. Really nice run. Though a couple folks I think were new to it, so we did really well. I had done this a couple times before. So yeah, so we launch attacks. You can see Gromph getting weak here. This battle's about 10 minutes longer than I'd want it to be. No, not really. A couple minutes too long. And he starts pulling in these kind of energies for another attack, but we are fortunately able to stop him in time and defeat him. Yeah, nice. So Gromph is down, and now we go to the Realm Engine, and what we actually do is we use it to enter the Demonweb Pits. So this is different than that weekly adventure. All of this from here on out is new stuff, though we see some of the maps during the hunts part of things. This is completely new. So this is their vision for the Demonweb Pits. You think of that multicolored web that I showed you, this is quite different. It still has these sort of paths, but it kind of shows you this sort of multiverse feel, right? It's very like Marvel, Doctor Strange kind of thing. This, you know, pathway. I'm just going to pause it. Well, I'll keep it going. So there's a bunch of spiders, and then there are things that look like they've sort of been pulled in from other worlds, right? Like sort of parts of castles. We'll see later on a ship. There's even a catapult we'll use. It's really quite cool. So try here to give you some views of it as I'm running around. All the spiderwebs kind of holding bits together. So this is their view in Neverwinter of the Demonweb Pits. I think they do a quite fun job. You know, if this were just gray, webby looking passageways, that would be pretty boring. So this is actually really cool, and they get to use, you know, pieces of other Neverwinter parts and then just kind of recast them with this kind of web or deterioration effect. And nice, smart way to reuse assets. I don't have a problem with that. And yeah, some of these rooms also appear in hunts, which is, again, you know, fair. You don't want to use everything just for one. Do a bunch of work for just a single use. Sometimes that's fine, but sometimes it's also fine to reuse things. So yeah, I'm fighting away at these spiders. We'll have many of these spiders, swarms of them that come at us as we go through this area. And then we will continue on the path, which actually is kind of like the Demonweb Pits. If you think of that map, right, it was sort of like these interlocking, intersecting corridors of different colors, and then there'd be these sort of rooms. And the encounters were often kind of, hey, kill the stuff inside. Like, not a lot of story usually in those encounters. So I think this does quite well for that homage to the original Demonweb Pits. And look how cool that looks, right? Here you can see a ship. So this is a boat, right, that's here. Right, that's I think that's the aft. Oh, yeah. It's hard to see where you are when you're running around. But yeah, and there's another ship over there. And so while we're running around just murderizing everything, there's still a lot of really cool stuff going on visually and statues and cool things like that. Different kinds of spiders. Sometimes that's an enormous big one, and swarms and little ones and medium ones, and venom shots and all kinds. So you can't tell a whole lot of it just because how we go quickly. And a few neat things like this, like you burn the web down, right, to go through it, which is very cool. So just some little bits of color like that. Keep it interesting, the ship. Further here, we're going to use a catapult. So there'll be a catapult up here. And the players already know what they're doing, so they just did it very quickly. You won't see much of the interaction. But up here, there is a catapult, and we use that to lower a bridge. You see that it fires off and causes the bridge to descend. You see that kind of falls down. I don't know if I was able to see, but it's kind of cool. You can just see it off in the distance. That bridge falls down, like bam, comes down. We continue fighting our way through here. And there are different names, Lolth's Landing, things like that. But yeah, I think it's a pretty nice job and actually a decent length for what this experience is. This part's a little easy, but it's good. It gives you a respite and still seems interesting, visually stimulating, kind of cool. You can totally see this being a fun, Dungeons & Dragons adventure to reproduce this as a D&D tabletop experience with some Dwarven Forge terrain. It would be pretty sweet. Okay, we come up here and we're going to get to the final area. You can see kind of off in the distance. I might pause it here. So kind of, if you see where I'm holding my mouse cursor, that is, well, I'm not sure if you see my mouse cursor actually. I don't think you do, but okay, if you look up to the top, there's actually a giant in midair holding an axe, hovering above this floating circle of stone. And that's where we're going to fight Lolth. And this is going to involve some fun things like the place being tipped, and the axe coming down, and various other neat things in homage to the movie Alien. So we come to this little circle. I do some last kind of preparations. And now you can see there's Lolth, and floating above, there's that huge kind of area of rock, and then you see there that kind of like a hovering in space, that huge giant with the axe. Lolth looks awesome. That's some of her art from the Magic the Gathering card set for Magic the Gathering Dungeons & Dragons. Looks really neat, which is based off of the 4th edition art. Very cool. So, that some of the typical stuff like tear into it, but then also, oh, look, I got a red zone on me, so I got to move out, keeps things fluid. One of my guys actually was down. I didn't realize, so I had to, or I guess someone else was able to get him in before I went there. And me being mostly at range here, it gives you kind of good view of what's going on there. We're on this disc of stone. The giant is up overhead, kind of seemingly just like it's just a backdrop. Oh, look, I got the here's the alien homage. You can get a spider on your face, and you're locked into fighting it until it gets killed by you or your friends. And then you're freed and you can get back to fighting. I think that is so cool. It's just great. It can hit you at really rough times, like when this area gets tipped, you can actually get the thing on your face, and then life is really not good. But yeah, so here we are. Lolth is about half of her hit points, and often you can expect that to trigger something. So she is going to use her web up at the top. You see there that kind of death giant thing, whatever's going on. And he drags with his axe. You can see Lolth jumps over to another rock. And we're now on this slope while stalactites fall on us. So we see those kind of red zones. We've got to dodge out of the way at an angle, not fall off, still get our friend back up, while all this is happening. And then we have spiders and the axe to attack. So there's this godly weapon. So I guess the idea is this is like a deadly god that came down. So you want to tear down at the weapon because eventually that weapon, I forget what happens. Something happens if you don't take it down. So we come over here and we start tearing in on it because we better do that because it stays locked in there, and I forget what it does. Something not good. So we're like, okay, everybody on the weapon. I think more of these green rays start coming off if you don't take the weapon down. So that's kind of and actually those are spiders. I think you can take the spiders down. I had not done this in a bit, so I forgot exactly what I was supposed to do this part. Again, Aragon has a great video on it. I'll be sure and check it at some point before I run this again. But I think this is a neat idea, right? Tabletop-wise, do you attack the spiders? Do you attack the weapon? But you can't let this weapon sit there on the edge there like that. Got to take that down. So we're taking down the spiders, taking down the weapon. And when it's finally down, then Lolth comes back. She has this bubble shield. So we see we're actually attacking the shield, not her. And then finally the shield's gone. We can start doing damage to her again. She looks really neat. I mean, it's such a cool visual. And yeah, she does a bunch of things. Like there's some of these red rays that connect players. She has an area of kind of like poison-like around her, which is rough. And then these red zones. So there's a lot that goes on in this. We do a really nice job. Again, very good healing that keeps most of us, from being in constant pressure, even though there is a lot of pressure going on. You can tell, which I love in D&D. I love fights that have tons of pressure to them, where it's not just the bad guys. The bad guys is cool, but you want these kinds of extra things. And even if it comes from the bad guy, like in this case, Lolth is creating pressure in a number of different elements, spawning things, giving off zones. So it doesn't feel like it's just her. It feels larger than that, and gives you more ways to respond as a player. So you can see her hit points coming down.
Your arrogance is delectable. No more.
So she just in time got that shield up, I guess. But and there we go. She drops off over the edge. My character has completed the Demonweb Pits dungeon, and then you get the sweet, sweet rewards. As before, you get to re-roll them if you're not happy with what you got. Then you kind of go like, okay, I guess that's as good as it's going to get. You can craft keys just like last time. So I had to craft one here. We were running several events, so before we went on the next one, I said, oh, hold on, need to craft this key. And you can craft a key through the whole campaign system, and then you can use it to open things up and get some kind of reward. And I got nothing exciting. So that's kind of it. But yeah, so this gives you a feel for, now you got to see really kind of the ending to the campaign. To me, this really does a nice job of ending. Zemens, when we were doing the Menzoberranzan campaign before this one, that kind of felt like it could have gone anywhere in the storyline, that you go off and fight this beholder as sort of a threat to the city or to you because you have the Eye of Odrin. Technically, I guess you could say it happens at the end, but it doesn't feel super connected to everything here. This does, right? So we had stopped Gromph Baenre's plans, but we didn't kill Gromph, so Gromph comes back, reenacts the ritual, and we really put an end to him and to Lolth. Now you might say, hey, wait a minute, does this mean we just killed the goddess, the demon goddess Lolth? Yeah, but she will come back, and that's what happens when you kill these folks. They are so powerful that gods and creatures like that will come back, but usually what it means is they can't come back to your world for quite some time. They need like at least a century to sort of reform, and that would create chaos in the area. Now, this is not canonical. What happens in Neverwinter doesn't mean that Lolth actually died. So it would probably take Lolth, R.A. Salvatore killing off Lolth to really make it canonical. Then indeed it would be the end of Lolth. But she lives on in any number of incarnations. You can kill her in all kinds of Dungeons and Dragons editions, and she comes back. She's a fantastic foe. It was very fun to see her in this version. I appreciated that. Even though she's a goddess, she is someone who, at least historically, canonically, in lore, you've gone up against many times. And so it was fun to do it again in the Neverwinter campaign. So this really concludes the Drow series. We did North Dark Reaches, we did Menzoberranzan, we did Demonweb Pits with the Narbundalan, and now we get to see where we're going to go. And well, the answer has already been spilled. The beans have been spilled online. We're not going anywhere on this map. We're going to go into space. So stay tuned for that as we look at the lore of Spelljammer next. If you like the work that I do, please consider going to the Drive-Thru RPG site to pick up the 2 products that you see here, or to the DM's Guild to find my work that is available there. If you go to alphastream.org, you can find lots of ways to support me, from Patreon to checking out my videos like this one, reading my blog, supporting the podcast of Mastering Dungeons. And you will find that if you join my Patreon, you will get both of these products that you see here for free. And just signing on to my mailing list at alphastream.org will get you one of them for free. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my work.